We are back with the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast following this year's NFL Combine. I don't think I'm going to be the only Browns fan digging through their old boxes to find this gem in Eric Metcalf jersey.
Wow. Well done, sir.
So let's kick it off with the Combine. Drew, you first. Who do you think John Dorsey and the Browns have their eye on following their performance in the Combine?
Yeah, let's first of all start off with a big old pat on the back to the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast. The two biggest winners at the Combine, as far as I'm concerned, are two names that we gave you 2 or 3 weeks back. We already talked about the first one, DK Metcalf, 6'3", 228 pounds, and he ran a 4.3 40. 27 bench reps, 40.5-inch vertical, just eye-popping numbers. The other guy is Montez Sweat, who we gave you as a guy that I thought might go late first, early second. I was hoping the Browns might have a shot at him late, and that's not happening anymore. 6'6", 260 pounds, and all he did was set the record for fastest defensive lineman in NFL Combine history. So those are the two big winners and two names we gave you a couple weeks back. There were several other great performances, though. Rashawn Gary, he's 277 pounds, and he ran a 4.58, 38-inch vertical, just explosive type of an athlete. Sort of makes you wonder what happened to him on tape. He wasn't that type of a player for Michigan last year, but excellent numbers. On the linebackers, Devin White, who we gave you, he ran a 4.42, almost a 40-inch vertical. Devin Bush, 4.43 and over a 40-inch vertical. So just eye-popping numbers, mostly on the defensive side of the ball. We also should note the Ohio State skill players, Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, both of which ran in the 4.3 range, and Johnny Dixon at 4.4, and Mike Weber, he was a 4.47. So excellent numbers there from Ohio State. We saw that on the field, especially against Michigan, the speed differential there, with the exception of Devin Bush, was just eye-popping, and that's that came out to play at the Combine. A couple losers that I didn't like their performance. The biggest one is Josiah Polite, the edge rusher from Florida. What I'm hearing is this is one of the worst combines ever. I mean, ever, like in the history of the Combine. He ran a 4.84. He faked a hamstring injury, pulled himself out of the rest of the drills, and all he did was whine about how people criticized him in interviews, right? Like, everybody came away with a bad taste on this kid, and I think he will cost himself some money. The offensive tackle, who I sort of like, but Greg Little, he actually ran one of the slowest 40 times with one of the slowest 10-yard splits, which makes you question if he can be an offensive tackle. The game tape's still pretty good, so I still like him, but certainly an issue there. And one other thing to note with DK Metcalf, I have him as both the biggest winner of the Combine and one of the bigger losers, because the straight line speed, the linear athlete stuff was incredible. But this guy ran slower in the 3-cone drills and slower in the short shuttle than Tom Brady. I'm not talking about the other wide receiver. I'm talking about Tom Brady in 2000 coming out of Michigan. He completed the 3-cone drill and the short shuttle faster than DK Metcalf. So I don't know what to make of that, but it's probably not somebody that I would draft at number 17 overall.
Yeah, I saw those numbers, and there's a lot of, he had such an incredible first day. Eric, what do you think? If you look at his overall weekend, did he really help himself, or did he sort of hurt himself with that 3-cone drill number?
Yeah, I mean, I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You have to ask which GM. I would think that would sway Dorsey away if he's there at 17. I don't think he's going to be there. I envision there's going to be somebody like an Al Davis that likes that Darius Hayward-Bay, John Ross. I don't care if he's fast, he's fast. But as Drew clearly said, they're going to be running digs. They're going to be running posts. They're going to be running comebacks. They're going to have to change your direction. And if there's going to be some quick corner that can sit on the route and jump it for an interception, that's not a lot of value in the NFL. So to answer your question, yeah, he slightly increased his value, but wow, that is, I didn't know that much about him coming out of college, other than he was big and strong, and he's got 1.6% body fat and is really strong and fast. 27 reps, but there are other parts of the game, and I didn't really like what I saw after the 40.
Yeah, there's definitely multiple sides. I think last year we figured out that there's the media side of what's going to go on with the draft, and then there's the actual NFL scout, NFL executive side, where it was a surprise to me that Mayfield was the number 1 pick, that Denzel Ward was the number 4 pick. But those picks ended up going
not a surprise
great.
to everybody on the podcast, man. Some of us had that thing from when he planted the flag at the horseshoe.
So
True.
I think a lot of people in media were saying, it was either Sam Darnold, it was Josh Rosen was a little bit more popular. Yeah, Josh Allen was, maybe the Browns are going to surprise everyone and go with Josh Allen. DK Metcalf has just lit the internet on fire with the picture of him just towering over some of his workout partners. And it'll be interesting to see if, the executives really and the scouts think of the same way of DK Metcalf. Does it worry you, Drew, that his numbers were a little less than a lot of the better receivers? I know Paris Campbell had really great numbers with Ohio State. I think he had 1,000 yards. DK Metcalf, 2 seasons that he really played. I think he had a redshirt freshman year. He really didn't put up good numbers. He had the injury his last year of college. But do you think numbers he can get past just those stats in actual play?
Yeah, it's going to be hard. He didn't play every game his final year, and I think if he had, he would have had pretty good numbers because his averages were pretty good. The only thing I'll say is that he didn't have probably the first or second overall quarterback drafted throwing to him, right? He didn't have Dwayne Haskins there at Ole Miss, so I give him some leeway there. The more eye-popping thing to me is the change of direction, and when you're that big, when you get to be that big, just the laws of physics make it hard to change direction quickly. We saw that in the NFL with David Boston. When he came out of Ohio State, he wasn't that big, and he was a pretty good player. And he didn't lose any speed, but when he got to be, 240 pounds of total muscle, it takes a little bit of time to get that much mass moving. It just does. And so I think that some of that will be evidenced on some of the tape that the GMs watch. And so I think he certainly improved his stock because people will look at a guy who is that big that can run really fast and stop, and you can run a hitch and you can run a go and you can run a post and you can run a corner, and that's 4 routes, and good luck defending all of them. But it's going to be tough for him to run any sort of double move, which a lot of receivers run to get open. It's going to be hard for him to run like an in or an out route, where you have to stop and change direction quickly. So he's probably the most interesting prospect, at least in my eyes, in terms of what he could be, but also some of the red flags.
The combine has really highlighted wide receivers. It's also a lot of Kyler Murray talk. But do you think the Browns' draft strategy has changed at all? Are we still looking at most likely a defensive end or a defensive tackle in this year's draft?
Yeah, I would say they're still leaning that way. From the movie The Office Space, I love the Bobs, but I'm really falling in love with the Devons this weekend. Devin White, Devin Bush. I really don't think Devin White's going to be in play, but, you could do a lot worse than Devin Bush. He really upped his game, at least in my eyes. And if they're not going to go linebacker, or if they are not going to go defensive line or cornerback, linebacker is going to be a great position of need, especially depending on what they do with Jamie Collins. So For me, that might have been more of a focal point, but for John Dorsey, he was probably thinking linebacker is one of his strengths. So, yeah, I think they're kind of sitting where they have been. And Dorsey, I forget the stat, but I know how many drafts he's been a part of since going back to Green Bay. He has, I think he's drafted a wide receiver, been a part of a front office that's drafted a wide receiver in the first round once, and I think that was Javon Walker back in Green Bay in 2000 and early 2000s. So I mean, he's not to the extent of Ray Farmer, which is he was allergic to drafting any type of wide receivers, but he just maybe might value those a little greater in rounds 2, 3, 4. That's why I kind of like Paris Campbell. We're gonna see what happens with Duke Johnson, but potentially could be a replacement. I know Duke's more of a running back, but the way he's been utilized in the NFL is not between the tackles. And Campbell's 5'11", 4'3", 4'3", 140, 11 reps, not too overwhelmingly strong, but strong enough. And you can go a lot of different ways, but I think the Browns are, and John Dorsey's been doing his homework, and I think he's going to be leaning towards defense, but those playmakers in the rounds 2 through 4 are definitely a strong possibility.
Yeah, I think there's been. I think you always have to keep in the back of your mind, what is a smoke screen? I think Dorsey was talking about, I'd love to have a 6'3" receiver that's 225 pounds, sort of talking about Metcalf, but how much of that is actually a smoke screen? So someone else would take Metcalf, so maybe some of his preferred linebackers, preferred defensive linemen are actually going to fall through. But it's been interesting. There's also been talk about Duke Johnson. Just like you mentioned, is he going to stay with the team? Is that just sort of a rumor that's going out there as all these scouts and executives are coming together? Eric, let's go back to you. Who do you think is going to come back to the Browns? Are we going to lose Duke in the near future here?
Well, I see 4 people that are in flux right now. The first, we'll talk about Duke Johnson. I think he's got the most realistic, one of the most realistic possibilities of staying with the team. Looking at their roster, they don't know what they're going to have with Kareem Hunt right now. So Duke, I would like to think Nick Chubb's going to be healthy all year long, but even if he is, you're going to need somebody to spell him. He's a pretty reliable backup. I don't know what they're going to do with the draft. Maybe they're planning on having Duke Chubb's backup in one of the middle rounds, which could then make Duke expendable. But for now, I think he's a pretty solid option at offense. He's not great, but he's a target and a weapon that can be used in both the run and pass game. Brashard Perriman is represented by Drew Rosenhaus, so I don't have to say a whole lot more about that. The way he represents his wide receivers is money, money, money. Try to get as much as you can and have no affiliation towards any team. You could see Terrell Owens, you could see Terrell Pryor, to name a few. He's going to want big buck or bigger bucks than he is probably worth. He had some tremendous catches last year. I remember the touchdown against the Ravens, the long bomb against the Panthers. But if you look at his stats, he wasn't overwhelmingly have big production. So I'm gonna be sad to see him go, but I think the Browns are going to do a good job replacing him. Next one would be Jamie Collins. He's slated to make just over $10 million next year. His play definitely did not warrant that in my eyes this past season. So unless there's some type of restructuring going, I don't envision him being with this team. And from his perspective, unless we're back-to-back AFC championship games, I don't really see his want or desire to spend his time more with the Browns on a lower contract. I mean, if he does, more power to him. That's more depth of the position, but realistically speaking, I could see him just jettisoning, going somewhere else. And last but not least would be Rashard Higgins. He's a restricted free agent, so he's likely going to be on the team unless some team is bowled over by his, the opportunity to sign him. And now I don't think it's come out yet what they're going to be tendering him, assuming that's what they do. It could be around, I believe, 1 through 5. You put the high round out there, somebody swipes, scoops him up, you're going to get that compensation. I think he's going to be like a second or third round tender, which is pretty steep considering he was drafted in the 5th round. So of the 4, I think Duke and Rashard will be back. But my only caveat is Duke could be used as a trading chip this spring. I don't envision like a straight Duke for 1 pick, but it's Duke for something for another player. But, that's kind of where I stand with that. And I hope I'm right with Duke and Higgins still being on the team.
So do you think Rosenhaus has learned his lesson after Pryor left? Maybe
No,
didn't have the... No.
No, I don't.
I agree.
No, I don't. I think this is terrible. I think he's giving the same bad advice to Rashard Perriman that he gave to Terrell Pryor. Terrell Pryor wanted to re-sign in Cleveland. Rashard Perriman wants to re-sign in Cleveland, and the Browns in both cases resurrected those guys' career. They signed Terrell Pryor off the scrap heap. They signed Rashard Perriman in the middle of the season off the scrap heap. He wasn't going to receive a deal at all. He would have been out of football. And they bring him in, and now he's in line to get some money. And I have no problem whatsoever with getting your client the highest amount of money possible. I don't. I think that when you look into things short term, like what he did with Terrell Pryor when he told them to turn down a 4-year contract from the Browns that would have been worth potentially $30 million for Terrell Pryor, and go sign somewhere on a 1-year deal to bet on yourself for a bigger payout, there's a big downside risk. Terrell Pryor didn't play in the league last year. And, he'd still be with the Browns. He would be receiving passes from Baker Mayfield, and who knows where his career ends up after that. So I have a real issue with Drew Rosenhaus, not because I think he's a bad agent, but because I think he gives bad advice specifically to the wide receiver position.
So if you've got a choice here, I think it's a pretty easy choice, especially with this nickname. Are you taking Hollywood Higgins or are you taking Perriman if only one can come back?
The nickname is way better for Rashard Hollywood Higgins. There's no doubt about it. I flash back to Hollywood Hulk Hogan and the NWO, just too sweet. But no, I'm taking Rashard Perriman. I'm taking the guy that is 6'3", runs a 4.25 40. He was a first-round pick for a reason. I think Rashard Higgins has probably better hands, but I like the dimension that Rashard Perriman brings to the team. The ability to run past anyone in the league is an asset that is impossible to coach. And he showed improved hands with Baker Mayfield. When you have a quarterback that can throw the ball perfectly accurate like Baker Mayfield can, your people's hands get a little better because it's right where they expect the ball to be almost every time, which is a major asset to Baker Mayfield. He makes people better. And if that's true, I'll take the guy with a higher ceiling that Baker Mayfield can make better.
All right, so let's talk some Cavs here. The Cavs have the final sprint here. There's been a lot of news around the league about the Lakers not making the playoffs, and now we're also going to see the final drive into the lottery. And the worst 3 teams in the league right now, the Knicks, the Suns, and the Cavs. But the Cavs aren't too far away from the Bulls. Drew, let's go back to you. Do you think the Cavs are going to finish one of the fans' goals for this season after things went really poorly? Do you think we're going to keep one of those top 3 spots in the lottery?
I am cautiously optimistic. I go back to that game where they foolishly defeated the Chicago Bulls. If we could have that one back, I would feel great about this. But I've looked into this, and of the 4 teams realistically in contention for the top 3 pick, the Cavs have the hardest schedule. They have the Bucks, they have the Warriors, the Sixers, the Raptors, and the Celtics all still on the schedule. There are 3 games behind the Knicks, 2.5 behind the Suns for the worst. They are 2 games ahead of the Bulls and 5.5 ahead of the Hawks. So I think Atlanta's really pretty much out of the question. It comes down to those top 3 picks. And so it's really down, I think, to the Cavs and the Bulls. The Bulls' schedule is easier, but it's not easy. The Bulls play the Raptors, the Pacers, and then they have 3 games remaining against the 76ers. And, I'm hoping that they manage to win one of those games. I don't think they will. But the Bulls do have 2 games against the Knicks, a game against the Suns, and a game against the Lakers. So they have some winnable games there, and we're really rooting for the Bulls to win more games than the Cavs. We need one of those top 3 picks, because with the new lottery, they're essentially the same thing. So they need to finish in the top 3, and I think they can bring this thing home.
Yeah, they've been playing a lot better with Kevin Love out there. Won a couple of games.
I'm worried about that. I'm hoping that the harder schedule. I'm hoping the Bulls can pull out a couple of these games against the Knicks.
Yeah, Sonia, do you think Love's going to play a majority of the games? Do you think they shut him down? Do you think Tristan Thompson's even going to come back? He's been injured for a while here. They might just shut him down as well. What do you think, Eric?
Well, if they're fighting for that bottom 3, I guess, top 3, bottom 3, however you want to look at it, then they should shut down Kevin Love. They're 5-1 with him in the last 6 games. Granted, they haven't been playing in a murderer's row, but regardless, they're 5-1. They're still playing NBA teams. Wins still matter. So, like Drew said, 2 games. 2 games better than Chicago. I'm going to not use a header behind because it's whatever direction you want to look, but they have 2 more wins than Chicago. I was pretty worried that they were going to catch Chicago before I heard Drew talk about Chicago's schedule. Those Chicago New York games are going to be pretty critical down the stretch. And playing the Clippers, Bucks, Golden State for the Cavs is and hopefully not Kevin Love on the floor will really help us cement that at worst case scenario, 3rd worst record in the league. I don't even know what Tristan Thompson is doing. Is he playing? Is he not? I feel like he's in the news for much other things than basketball. So
yeah, he's tired from the 7-somes he's been having. He can't muster the energy to get on the court after that.
So I mean, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes to.
Is that what's going on? Is that what I see popping up on Twitter? Jeez.
Yeah, that's the rumor. He had a 7-some with 7 Instagram models, and he wonders why he needs to take a game off for load management after that.
All right, we are moving on to the final promo, and we're going to continue the focus on the Combine. And I think there's been a lot of focus on, is the 40-yard dash in a good measurement for NFL players? There's so many plays where you're not just running in a straight line. Does it actually matter? Is the 3-cone drill the thing that matters? Is it the vertical jump that matters because it tests explosiveness? Well, if it isn't these things that matter, then what does matter? And how would you guys fix the Combine? Is there a better way to test these players within this closed environment? And that's the question in our final promo. And Drew, we're going to kick it off with you.
Yeah, I need more analytics from my Combine. These guys should be wearing those like suits with all of the monitoring, equipment on them, so that I can tell exactly how fast one athlete goes through a drill versus how fast somebody else does. Everything should be timed. You should be able to analyze all of this data. Why not? You can't tell me the NFL is too hard up to provide the equipment and the infrastructure to support that, because I disagree with that entirely. For the running back drills, when they have like the blocker and they tilt it to one side and you have to run to the other side, I want to see the reaction time. I want to see how long it takes somebody to get past that blocker, because that matters. Tenths of seconds matter huge in the NFL. So that's the first thing I'd like to see. The second thing I'd like to see, and this is sort of just an idea that's in my head. I don't have all the logistics worked out just yet, but I would like to see an inverted high jump for edge rushers, where you have to dip your shoulder as low as you can go when you're running around the corner. And obviously the lower you get, the better, because that would show, scouts that you are able to turn the corner. That is one of the most important pass rush moves for an edge rusher. So anybody that is an edge rusher, you ought to be able to, get your shoulder underneath a certain length, because if you can, it's borderline unblockable. And so if they could figure out a way to measure that, I think that would provide some really good data points around who has the flexibility to sort of rush the edge like that versus a guy that can't get low and you can block him. And the last thing I would selfishly like to see is I would like to see the offensive linemen and defensive linemen pull a car 40 yards. Who can pull a car the fastest? I think that would show some of the explosiveness in the short, starting blocks that you need on the offensive line and defensive line. Who can get that car going fastest, quicker? That's something I would selfishly like to see. I don't think it will ever happen. No, I know for certain it won't ever happen. But going back to some of those strongman competitions that they used to show, I think that'd be a good one.
Yeah, I was immediately thinking strongman and
yeah, exactly.
But a lot of athletes train with sleds though as well, so you're not really too far off as far as blending the actual weightlifting with the actual sport specific movements. I like it. Eric, how would you fix the combine?
Well, at this time of year, I'm just jonesing for some football, and not just guys running around, running routes. So, I want to see some competition, maybe some one-on-one receivers, DBs, or two-on-two. You could have a slot corner as well as a flanker, X. We want to get into the actual contact and hitting. And then, God willing, have a 7-on-7 or a small session. I know it's probably going to be difficult with so many players, but at least you can try to get some type of gauge of, player X, player Y against a person, he doesn't run slants well, or this corner can jump comebacks really great. It's one thing to backpedal and run across the pads and karaoke across them. That's nice and good, but I want to see what you're doing against other players. And I know that they put tape out there in college, but you got, let's say Paris Campbell is going to be going against a defensive back from Poughkeepsie State he's never even seen before. And when will you see that? Those two might not ever go against each other. They didn't go in college. They might not go in the NFL. So it's those type of things that I think that'd be pretty neat to see. It'd switch it up. I don't think that NFL would have to worry about injuries as far as, people connecting with one another. But I thought it'd be something that would be pretty interesting, both for the fans and scouts alike.
I think they should have an actual karaoke contest.
They could do a karaoke's.
I like it. I'll throw one more in. I like the idea of testing reaction times, getting more stats, and I'll think a little bit more future oriented here. Let's put some VR headsets on these guys, give them a couple of different situations, see how fast they react, maybe have like some sort of physical component to that as well. But a lot of it is, how do these players react to the game? How do their minds read the game? We've seen that especially with quarterbacks, and I think that's...
Yeah, I was just thinking, for quarterbacks, that'd be great.
That's such a strength of Baker Mayfield's. It seems like he is just a very intelligent football player who can figure out where the open guy is, and compared to measurables, that's going to be one of the important things that brings the Browns into the future, is Baker Mayfield, and we need more intelligent football players on this team. But guys, thanks for talking some combine, talking some Browns, talking some tanking, and
one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah, right. This time of year.
And we'll get more into free agency. We'll finish out the Cavs season, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
See you next week.
All right. Talk to you later.